We're in the seventh class that I'm teaching inside of a large jail on the East Coast. I think I've said it before, so I'll say it again. It's the Mecklenburg County Jail. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity to be able to interact with the men inside. We've already covered quite a few portions of the Straight A Guide program, or the part of this program which is called How to Succeed from Inside of a Jail or a Prison. But I'm really enthusiastic about sharing them these final four classes, because these are, now that you've gotten that backstory, it's time that we can start applying these lessons to our life. And I'm going to be sharing with them how I use these principles of a values-based, goal-oriented adjustment strategy to power through 26 years with my dignity intact and with an opportunity to build a life of prosperity and meaning and contribution, even while I was in prison. But more importantly, how it helped me return to society super strong. And that is the framework that I want to share, because this is the framework that I learned from leaders. This is the pathway to becoming the CEO of your life and not allowing external influences or external factors to dictate what you become. And it really all starts with really deciding, where are you and do you like where you are? If you don't like where you are, then you've got to become aware of saying, well, how did I get here? And that all starts with this introspection of really going back to your earliest decisions and figuring out, why is it that other people started with the same background that I started from, but they didn't have the same outcome that I had. I mean, I grew up in an area where everybody made better decisions than I made. I was the one who ended up going to federal prison with a very lengthy sentence. So I start off with questions like that. And then you begin asking yourself, okay, well, this is where I am. It doesn't have to be where I will always be. Where do I want to go with my life? So it's very important that we are aware of this concept. And if we can start figuring that out at the earliest stage of the journey, we can make better decisions. I was very fortunate to have been exposed to real leaders, real masterminds while I was still inside of a county jail. And because of that exposure, I understood that I didn't like where I was at the time in a solitary cell, and I wanted to think about where I would be going. I like to think about, who knows who I am? What am I going to do? I wanted to think about, who do I want to know who I am? And by asking those kinds of Socratic questions, I could make better decisions going forward. And so I just had to look around and think about, well, what resources did I have around me? The more I understood what resources I had around me, the more I could figure out how to use them, and the more I could figure out how to avoid that shiny objects syndrome that derails success for so many people. I wanted to, then during our one-on-one break, I'm going to ask the individuals to kind of tell me, how does this concept of awareness really influence their life where they are right now? So those one-on-one questions really give me an opportunity to interact and respond. And of course, I feature all of those on the YouTube channel. I have to blur their faces out, but you will see how I interact with them. And if there's one thing that we'll talk about, is I want them to be thinking about these concepts both before sentencing, after sentencing, and of course after release. And I've got a number of stories that I'm going to be sharing with them about how I used this concept before sentencing and how it influenced the journey ahead. I want to talk about how I use this concept to persuade universities to admit me, even though I couldn't take the appropriate entrance exams, and even though I couldn't participate in the residency requirements. I want to explain to them how I use these concepts to orchestrate, or even some might say maneuver or manipulate my way into transfers to the prisons where I wanted to go. I want to talk about publishing and how I use these concepts to develop a career as a published author, even while I was in prison. I want to talk about these concepts, about how I use these strategies to develop a pathway to understanding the stock market and earning more than $1 million through stock speculations that I made while I was inside of a prison cell. I want to talk about how I use these concepts to maneuver my way into marrying the love of my life, Carol, a woman to whom I've been married now for 18 years. I want to talk about how these concepts led to me building businesses while I was in prison, and more importantly, how I use these concepts to build businesses upon my release, not only once, but numerous times. It's the reason I feel so passionately about this concept of a values-based, goal-oriented life. But the concept of awareness is super important, because it truly gives us the ability to see what's around us, and simultaneously to make the world aware of who we are and the value that we can bring to the world. That gets people investing in us, and that's what makes all the difference. So I'm super excited to share these concepts with the men inside of jails and prisons across America. And if you would like to see the concepts, just subscribe to our YouTube channel, ring the bell, and you'll be notified of every time I publish a new interview. And I publish new content every single day because we are determined to teach and inspire as many people in jails and prisons across America as we possibly can. We truly believe this is the way that we can be the change that we want to see in the world. I'm Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and I thank you for showing an interest in our programs. Thanks.